Michael Malloy. Meet Michael Malloy, a man so unkillable he made Hulk look fragile. In 1933, 5 men, later called the Murder Trust, cooked a plan to take out a life insurance policy on Malloy and then, well, you get the idea. What they didn't anticipate was that Malloy had the constitution of a battle-hardened cockroach. First, they spiked his drinks with antifreeze. He drank it like water. Then turpentine. Then rat poison. Nothing. They served him rotten oysters soaked in methanol and a sandwich stuffed with shrapnel. He ate them like it was a happy meal, even asking for another. Desperate, they left him in the snow, doused in water, overnight. He woke up completely fine. At their wits' end, they ran him over twice with a taxi. He survived. As a last resort, they stuck a gas hose in his mouth while he slept, finally killing him. The Murder Trust collected their payout, until the police got suspicious and arrested them all, 4 of them receiving the death sentence. Moral of the story? Beware who you call friends. Also, don't scam people. It's bad. Heraclitus of Ephesus. Heraclitus, the philosopher of contradictions who believed in constant change, died in a way that could have easily been avoided. Suffering from dropsy, an ancient term for swelling, he asked the doctors if they could create drought after wet weather. If you don't know what that means, well, neither did the doctors. So he took matters into his own hands and covered himself in cow poop, hoping the heat would dry out his body. But the dung trapped him like quicksand, and he was soon attacked and eaten by dogs. Ever notice how philosophers had some of the weirdest deaths in history? Moral of the story? Don't cover yourself in cow poop near dogs. Sigurd Eysteinsson. Sigurd the Mighty was a Viking warlord who earned his name through conquest, but his greatest enemy wasn't a warrior, it was a bad dental hygiene. After winning a glorious battle by defeating his enemy Malloy, he cut off his head and tied it to his saddle like a trophy. Except as he rode home, Malloy's severed head shifted, and one of his teeth scraped Sigurd's leg. That tiny wound got infected, and lo and behold, the mighty Viking was dead. Now, does this count as dying in battle? Because if not, he just missed his train to Valhalla. Moral of the story? Brush your enemy's teeth 2 times a day. Sam Wardell. Oversleeping is bad, but this is worse. Sam Wardell, a lamplighter in 1880s New York, built a homemade wake-up system using a clock, some wires, and a 10-pound stone. It worked great until one night he partied, moved his bed, and got drunk, and put it back in the wrong place. The next morning, the device did its job. The stone fell right on his head, killing him instantly. Moral of the story? Sticks and stones may break your bones. Li Bai. Li Bai, China's legendary poet, loved 3 things: words, wine, and the moon. One night, after a little too much to drink, he was sailing the Yangtze River when he saw the reflection of the moon on the water. It was so beautiful, so majestic, that he reached out to hug the moon. But he forgot one small detail: there's no moon in the water. So he drowned, leaving behind a beautiful yet tragic tale of a poet whose love for the moon cost him his life. Someone should write a poem about this. Moral of the story? Shoot for the moon, land among Titanic. Empedocles of Akragas. Empedocles, the pre-Socratic philosopher from Sicily, believed he was no longer mortal. He claimed he had achieved divinity, and to prove it, he leaped into the active Mount Etna volcano, thinking he'd just walk out as a god. The locals later found a sandal near the crater, and since Empedocles didn't come back up from the volcano to get it back, it's pretty easy to guess what happened. He became immortal and chose to live happily in that volcano to this day, of course. Moral of the story? Don't throw yourself in a volcano. Next, we have Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China who had everything one could wish for, yet it still wasn't enough. He wanted to live forever, and since jumping in a volcano seemed a bit too much, he started ingesting mercury pills, believing that it would grant him eternal life. Instead, the mercury quickly killed him, doing the opposite of what he hoped to achieve. Moral of the story, mercury bad. Aeschylus. Aeschylus, one of Greece's greatest playwrights, was warned by an oracle that he'd die by a falling house, so he played it safe and stayed outside. But the universe found a way. An eagle mistook his bald, shiny head for a rock and dropped a tortoise on him, hoping to crack its shell. The tortoise lived, Aeschylus didn't. Guess the prophecy was right after all, since Aeschylus was killed by a falling house of a turtle. Moral of the story, don't go outside if you're bald. Edmund Ironside. Being a medieval king was tough. You had wars to fight, betrayals to dodge, and apparently toilet assassins to worry about. King Edmund Ironside learned this the hard way when he sat down to handle business, when an assassin struck from the shadows. And by shadows, I mean under the toilet. An enemy soldier hid beneath the king's latrine and stabbed him from underneath. Imagine having to explain his death to an entire kingdom. Moral of the story? Always check for toilet paper and assassins when going to the bathroom. Clement Vallandigham. Clement Vallandigham was a lawyer defending a man accused of murder, and he had one goal: to prove the victim shot himself. So, to demonstrate how the accident might have happened, he picked up a pistol, aimed it at himself, and pulled the trigger. Unfortunately, the gun was very real, and the bullet was very much inside him. Vallandigham died from the same self-inflicted shot he was trying to argue had killed the original victim. The bright side? His client was acquitted because, well, Vallandigham had just proved his point in the most dramatic way possible. On the not-so-bright side, he didn't get to celebrate his victory. Moral of the story? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Franz Reichelt. Franz Reichelt was a man of ambition, invention, and very poor decision-making. In 1912, the Austrian-born tailor designed a parachute, convinced it would revolutionize aviation safety. Instead of testing it on a dummy, like literally everyone advised, he insisted on jumping himself from the Eiffel Tower. With cameras rolling and a crowd watching, Reichelt jumped and plummeted straight down, hitting the ground in under 5 seconds. His parachute had barely opened, and his historic moment turned into one of history's most tragic live demonstrations. Moral of the story: never believe in yourself. Jimmy Ferrozzo. Some people dream of going out in a blaze of glory. Jimmy Ferrozzo went out in the middle of a very different kind of heat. In 1983, the bouncer was having an intimate moment with his girlfriend, Teresa Hill, on a grand piano at the Condor Club. The problem was that the piano wasn't just for decoration. It was attached to a hydraulic lift that raised it to the ceiling. Somehow, in the heat of the moment, Ferrozzo triggered the lift, which pinned him against the ceiling and suffocated him. Teresa survived, trapped for hours beneath his body, but Ferrozzo had officially taken death by piano to a whole new level. Moral of the story? Beware of your surroundings, especially when you get freaky. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, please.